This is a war story. It is actually a collection of war stories and impressions gathered on assignment covering the Persian Gulf War. It is a Desert Storm diary. The diary was compiled as the ground war began, raged, and then ended in ceasefire. The diary focuses on local servicemen and servicewomen living and working far from home and far from the international media spotlight, but not far from harm's way. I'm Keith Martin. I arrived in Saudi Arabia on February 22nd and left March 3rd. It was a 10-day period beginning just 2 days before the final ground assault started and ending just 3 days after the ceasefire. It was an assignment harder to arrange than to decide to undertake. It was an assignment planned and considered ever since the first local reserve and National Guard units were alerted for possible service in the Gulf. It was an assignment where you could almost say, you can't get there from here. The first and most formidable obstacle in the way of getting to Saudi Arabia is obtaining a visa. That involves making application to the Saudi embassy in Washington and then waiting, and more waiting. All of this amid efforts to get your application out of the pile for consideration. It's a process all of the electronic and print journalism organizations came to know very well. I picked up my approved visa on February 20th, and 2 days later left for the 11-hour non-stop flight from Kennedy Airport in New York to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. In Jeddah, all arriving journalists were greeted by the Saudi Information Ministry before flying on to the Joint Information Bureau in Riyadh, where military and Saudi media credentials were issued. Then it was a 4-hour, 90-mile-per-hour drive to the Persian Gulf city of Dhahran, the site of the second Joint Information Bureau, and the home for the majority of the media presence covering the war. It was from Dhahran I filed most of my 19 telephone and satellite reports on the war. Well, I think one thing we have to do, Brian, is we have to not only look at the battlefield as flat, we have to consider it in layers, vertical layers, because the coordination that's involved here when you have ground forces, particularly fast-moving tanks, the line forward moves very quickly. And the heroes of this battle, in many cases, alongside of the actual fighting forces, will be people with a strange-sounding job descriptions such as FACs, forward air controllers, FIST, fire support teams, FISCORD, fire support coordinators. Now, let's make no mistake, the war is not over here tonight. We had 2 separate Scud alerts tonight. The first was not an alert. It was a very real thing. A Scud missile hit, or at least portions of a Scud missile hit, somewhere in the Khobar region. I cannot be more specific than that, other than to tell you it was a warehouse facility that had been adapted to become a billeting area for U.S. Support Command troops. We do know that at least one minister of the Kuwaiti government is here in Dhahran. Several others are reported to be en route. And my sources in the Kuwaiti Ministry of Information say they expect when several of the ministers, the key ones, get here, they will be in position to return to their country, that the emir would follow later. So we are setting the stage here in Dhahran for the final stages of the liberation of Kuwait. For the next 55 minutes, you will see and hear what I saw and heard as recorded by this 8mm video camera. Now, since I was working alone, it fit the bill in a lot of important aspects. It's small, as you can see, very light, entirely self-contained. It was automatic with automatic focus and a microphone built right into the nose of the camera. So obviously it was easy to use and very portable. And as you will see, it was very good in low light conditions and very bright light conditions. So it was with this camera in hand I was able to visit 2 local Army Reserve units working in the desert as part of Operation Desert Storm. Now, the first thing I want you to see is how the men and women were coping with life in the desert. The 300th U.S. Army Reserve Field Hospital is providing health care services to Iraqi prisoners held at a camp in northeastern Saudi Arabia. The 402nd Military Police Company is operating a prisoner of war enclosure at the other major POW facility, located 150 miles away in north-central Saudi Arabia. Both units have a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week mission. And I found the soldiers of both units working hard and taking their work seriously. But I also found a good sense of humor and commitment to the families supporting them at home.
The 5th of March is my 25th wedding anniversary, and I wish to wish my husband a happy, very happy wedding anniversary, and hope he can celebrate even if I'm not there.
Tell the Red Barons when we get back home we want 400 seats for 300 Field Hospital Day. We're all Red Barons fans. Good public relations. I love you, Deb.
My name's Steve Young. I'm from Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania.
Greg Kerr, I'm from Persian, Pennsylvania.
Jeremy Concert, I'm from Brooklyn, Pennsylvania.
Mike Urbanus, I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Rita Keeney from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Jeff Bank is from Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania.
Staff Sergeant Vincent Carl Lewis from Harvey's Lake, PA. The Rusty Nail. And anybody at the Rusty Nail, I said hello.
What is the military name for that lovely garment?
It doesn't have one. It is unique. It has never occurred anywhere in the world that I know of prior to popping up at Saudi Arabia. And there it is, in all its glory.
Cheryl, we love you. Can't wait to come home. Love you, Bill. Hope to see you soon. Oh, we're going home.
I just got back from a mission with the 82nd Airborne. I'm here with my unit. I'm glad to be back.
You have a message for your family back home.
Tell them we're all going to get home real soon. We love them. We miss everybody, and the days can't be short enough.
I wrote you a letter. I hope to get there before it does.
Do I get to say hello to my mom and my son?
You absolutely do. First of all, what's your rank and your name and where are you from?
My name is Staff Sergeant Hardy, and I'm from Shamokin, Pennsylvania.
Well, Sergeant, it looks like you hold the hammer around here.
Once in a while, I get to do a little good work.
I'd like to say hello to my wife, Teresa, my 6 children, 8 grandchildren, and wish them all well.
You don't look that old.
Well, I had an early start.
I'm an assistant supply clerk for second enclosure.
Do you have everything you need to do the job over here?
No.
Well, what you don't have, you find, right?
Exactly. You're required.
Definitely the support of the American people is unbelievable. I'm going down to the oldest to the youngest. I don't know how you could say that the letters, the support, what they're doing, what you hear about it, from the news, through the newspapers you do read, the support is unbelievable.
Now let me show you specifically where the 300th Field Hospital and 402nd MP Company were living and working when I found those units. First of all, the 402nd MPs. If you look at your maps of Saudi Arabia, you will find a major road junction about 40 miles below the junction of the Kuwaiti and Iraqi borders. It is a small city called Hafr el-Batan. A major road runs east and west, another road north and south. About 5 miles east of that road junction is where the 402nd MP Company is building and working on a major enemy prisoner of war camp. The 300th U.S. Army Reserve Field Hospital is located near a town of Az-Sarar, literally in the middle of the desert, about 180 miles from Dhahran on a 2-lane road in the middle of the desert. There is the second of the 2 major Allied coalition prisoner of war camps. It was there that I found the 300th U.S. Army Reserve Field Hospital. And I found both units working on 2 separate aspects of the same job. The 402nd Military Police Company and the 300th Field Hospital share an armory headquarters in the Hanover Industrial Park. During and after Operation Desert Storm, they share deep and direct involvement with enemy prisoners of war at camps more than 100 miles apart in Saudi Arabia. For the 402nd, the job is confinement. For the 300th, it is care.
This hospital has been distinctly set aside out of the normal U.S. casualty chain, specifically to treat prisoners of war. And that's the first time, to the best of my knowledge, it's been done since the Second World War. Treating EPWs takes a little bit of thought adjustment, but within a matter of a couple of days, everyone had pretty much settled into the idea, and everyone now sort of kind of feels a little bit of a sense of pity for these people as they come through. They're emaciated. Many of them have not eaten in a long, long time. Many of them have desperate need of body fluids and things. They're dehydrated. They're just in terrible shape when they get here, and you sort of can't help but, you know, regardless of who they are, your heart sort of goes out to them a little bit.
While the 300th built a hospital in the desert, the 402nd built a POW enclosure in the desert. Colonel Wendell Rich is a veteran of 25 years with the Philadelphia Police Force. He heads security for SmithKline Beecham, and he now heads a force of more than 1,000 men and women, dealing with several times that number of EPWs.
Once they come out of the combat theater, that they understand that they're no longer combatants. And our job at that point is to feed them, clothe them, house them, and take care of them. You separate them by rank so they don't have that command structure while they're in your camp. And you want them to have that uncertainty. You don't want them to feel too confident while you're in your camp. You want them to be a little uncertain as to what you're going to do with them. That way they obey your orders. So you segregate them, you put the officers in one area, you put the enlisted person in another area. If you have females, you segregate that group in another area. Republican Guards, we'd separate them in another area because we want to break down their authority structure.
Rich told me dealing with the Arabic Muslim prisoners poses special challenges.
Their sanitation is different. For instance, they don't use toilet paper, they use water. So field sanitation is a big issue. We have many latrines out there, and latrines have to be empty. There's a lot of water that's used when they go to the bathroom. So as a result, we can't burn it like we do with the U.S. troops. So we have to bring in trucks and have it taken out. Their eating habits are different. They enjoy things like lamb and chicken and rice, and we have a lot of work just to get that amount of food into the enclosure and make sure these people are at least fed twice a day. Besides just being a military police officer and running a camp, we found there's a lot more to it. Very logistics intensive.
And so far, are you proud of what your unit's been able to accomplish?
Absolutely. You never cease to amaze me.
Now, it's very important to remember that there were and are thousands of Pennsylvanians serving in the Gulf. They are in every branch of the service, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, and Coast Guard, and in every component, the active, the reserve, and the National Guard. Now, I was able to see only a few of the men and women from our northeastern and central Pennsylvania hometowns. I wish I could have seen them all to show them to you. But here are some of the men and women I was able to talk to and record.
Don Kishball from Jonestown.
Gene Santarelli, Laughlin.
Lieutenant Colonel Carpenter, Wilkes-Barre.
Colonel Iorio from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Specialist Galone, I'm from Kingston.
I was Jay Maxwell, Inkerman, Pennsylvania.
I'm Jim Smith from Gloucester. Staff Sergeant Vincent Carl Lewis from Harvey's Lake, PA.
Shakur, Pennsylvania, Sergeant Huckleberry.
My name is Richard Binker. I'm from Hudson, Pennsylvania.
I'm William Pfeiffer, and I'm from Clark Summit.
John Schwitz-Pauls, Nanago, Pennsylvania.
Lori Golightly from Wilkes-Barre.
I'm Captain Mary Pinto, and I'm from Moscow, Pennsylvania.
I'm Major Alan Hannes. I'm the adjutant with the 300 Field Hospital.
Brent Zimmer.
Staff Sergeant Carl Colarusso.
Major Drake, I'm from Factorville, Pennsylvania.
I'm Sergeant First Class Joe Fabini.
My name is Joy Glodak.
Hi, my name is Sergeant Terry Morrell.
My name is Laura E. Lee. I'm a Sergeant First Class.
Warrant Officer Candidate William Good.
Well, coming up next on Desert Storm Diary, a look at the 300th U.S. Army Reserve Field Hospital and a glimpse of what it means to a local family to see how their loved ones are doing in the desert.
They think I was slow, they still we were not.
Pick your head up.
We were stopped by other Oh, yeah. We have to get
I learned there are more than 40 military hospitals operating in Saudi Arabia. They're all part of the enormous medical commitment to caring for the Allied coalition forces involved in the war. Well, I found the 300th hospital with its hands full treating enemy soldiers who survived the Allied air and ground attacks and the months of living in the deserts of Iraq and Kuwait. The more than 400 members of the unit established the hospital complex on a 23-acre site after first clearing away the leftovers of an active Army medical facility. The hospital was in operation in just a week, about 1/3 of the time expected by the Army. The facility is nearby a major enemy prisoner of war compound with the dual mission of providing medical care to Allied forces and Iraqi prisoners. During the day I spent with the unit, several dozen prisoners were brought in, some with wounds, many suffering from malnutrition and dehydration.
We've been very busy taking care of EPOWs, and we're stand ready now waiting for another group to come in for treatment for malnutrition and dehydration.
And you believe that you were trained to do the job that you were sent here to do?
Yes, sir. In the last 24, 48 hours, we've seen quite a few and did a lot of good treatment for them and helped a lot of soldiers.
Got a lot of great people to work with that were willing to get in and do whatever they had to be done.
with the number of casualties we're seeing, even though they're minor, the pharmacy is busy right now.
The hospital is an interlocking series of clinical facilities and wards staffed 24 hours a day, ready to respond to patients brought in by air or ground ambulances. Living quarters are tents. Eating and cooking facilities are tense. Administrative facilities are tense. This promotion ceremony took place in a tent. And everywhere I went, I found pride and high morale.
It's a particular pleasure to give these fine young men and women promotions right here. They deserve a lot more, and I think everybody in the country applauds you.
My name is Jim Smith. I'm from Bloomsburg. Joe Walton, 44.
Christina Britton, Benton.
Scott Lamran, Bloomsburg. Robert Thibodeau, Toby Hanna.
What's the significance of the Sidewinders?
This is our tent. This is our pub. I'm Sergeant First Class Bob Kolonowski. I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
I'm Sergeant First Class Alan Wrobleski. I'm from Dixon City, Pennsylvania.
I'm Sergeant First Class John Ruskowski from Michigan City, Indiana.
Please report to bad. Sergeant Ruskowski, please report to bad. Thank you.
They're always looking for Sergeant Ruskowski. They must want cigars.
Maybe they do. My first cigar in 2.5 years from Tony Peters of Pennsylvania, Peters Ice Cream.
Is it good?
Better than, I can't say it on TV.
My name is Master Sergeant John Molesky. I'm from Hoosick, Pennsylvania.
Sergeant First Class Dave Piscotti, Shavertown, PA.
And everywhere I went, I found signs of love for families and friends at home. And signs the spirit of northeastern and central Pennsylvania is alive and well in northeastern Saudi Arabia.
Thank you all for your support. Thank you all for your prayers, your cards and letters. They meant so much to me. God bless America. Proud to be an American and proud to be a soldier in the United States Army.
Love and miss all you. I hope to see you soon.
Tell the breweries to put an extra shift on.
Keith, I wish you could have been here and heard the reaction just a few moments ago. There were tears, there were cries of, there's Paul, and I also heard, oh my heavens, he has a mustache now. Obviously, he did not. The Simonetti family last saw Paul when he was a PFC in January. I'm here with Paul's mother, his father, his grandfather, and other members of the family. Mrs. Simonetti, you haven't seen Paul since January. I got some tears in your eyes.
Only a mother could recognize her own son. I mean, like, see him like that, I don't know, I just emotional. It's like...
What was your first thought when you saw him?
Oh, thank God, and I'm so proud of him, and God bless him.
Mr. Simonetti, Paul's father. Mr. Simonetti, before you told me that this almost seemed like a fantasy, like you've seen pictures, you know he's there, but it doesn't seem real. How does it feel after you've seen him now?
It's almost like watching a movie. It really is. It hasn't sunk in yet or whatever. I know it's a tremendous learning experience for him and developing his character and everything. But I know he's there, but maybe some part of me doesn't want to believe it.
In my military experience, I learned there are some experiences and concerns which unite all soldiers, regardless of age or branch or where or when they served. Anyone who has been in or around the military knows how important mail, pay, and chow are to soldiers, and all of the above are very important to our local troops. There are several factors which complicate the job of paying, feeding, and getting mail to soldiers in the Persian Gulf. The region is 6,000 miles from the United States, and within the region, units are widely scattered over long distances, and some units move quickly and often as part of their mission. But most of all, there have been as many as 563,000 U.S. servicemen and women stationed in the Gulf, creating a mammoth logistical, administrative, and support task. I found the 300th Field Hospital and 402nd MP Company coping with the challenges as best as possible. Getting payrolls and allotments for families established and correct has been a big job. There have been some problems.
I'm the finance clerk.
Is that why everybody likes you so much?
Well, they shouldn't like me right now.
If they don't like you, is that bad for them?
Well, not necessarily, considering we didn't get our LESs yet.
An LES is the leave and earnings statement, which serves as the soldier's pay stub to verify they're getting paid everything to which they're entitled. And when soldiers are promoted, as was the case here for a dozen 300th Field Hospital soldiers, it entitles them to a pay increase. Dunmore resident Paul Simonetti Jr. was one of the group promoted from private first class to specialist. And that means a new rank, and that means a higher paycheck and a morale boost. The mess hall or mess tent in the cases of the 300th and 402nd are crucial to the health, welfare, and morale of the troops. I found both units receiving at least one hot meal a day, along with the packaged meals ready to eat, or MREs most have come to love or hate. At the 300th, the evening meal that night was going to be turkey with potatoes and vegetables. At the 402nd, volunteers were preparing for a special meal organized by Chaplain Father Mark Rossetti. For lunch, many of the soldiers chose to eat food from care packages from home,
Sandwich again when you get home.
or to fall back on the old American standard, peanut butter and jelly. A mail for both units is taking about 2 weeks in each direction, with the flow starting to pick up now because both units are now established in fixed locations. Time and time again, men and women of the 402nd and 300th told me how important letters and packages from home were, including the now famous letters addressed to any soldier. To that I can add that while there may be a reduction in the anxiety now with the ceasefire, the soldiers are working just as hard, just as long, and just as far from home. And now, more than ever, as they wait for word on when they can return, need a constant flow of support from families and friends at home. And now, more of the faces of our men and women serving in the Persian Gulf.
My name is Lieutenant Schoenberger from Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Specialist Brian S. Jekyll. I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
My name is Sergeant Lisa Marie Garman. I'm from Pittston.
Sergeant William A. Kennedy, from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
My name is Sergeant First Class John Morrison-Kowski from Nanticoke.
Hi, I'm Staff Sergeant Paul Shimosky from Clarksville, Pennsylvania.
My name is Sergeant Johnson. I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
My name is Sergeant Rakers. I work for the S3 here at 402nd.
Hi, I'm Specialist Schaefer from Tunkhannock, Pennsylvania.
Specialist Bobby Seekers-Turner from Muncie, Pennsylvania.
My name is Specialist Kelly White. I'm from Justice, Pennsylvania.
I'm Sergeant First Class Michael W. Ryerson from Dallas, Pennsylvania.
My name is Specialist Francis Eigelinger from Mountaintop, Pennsylvania.
My name is Specialist Casher. I'm from Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania.
Specialist Eric L. Messersmith from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Sergeant Kevin Coleman, Taylor, Pennsylvania.
Sergeant First Class Lawrence Richards from Dallas, Pennsylvania.
Desert Storm Diary will continue in just a moment with the 402nd Military Police Company as it works with enemy prisoners of war.
One of the guys demonstrated.
A major and lingering byproduct of the lightning-fast Allied attack on Kuwait and southern Iraq is the virtual army of enemy prisoners of war. The task of collecting and confining tens of thousands of prisoners from another culture is the world of the military police. This is an enemy prisoner of war camp in north-central Saudi Arabia. The 402nd Military Police Company, headquartered at the Hanover Industrial Park, arrived in Saudi Arabia trained to process, protect, and confine enemy prisoners of war. I found the unit busy putting the training to use, handling some of the tens of thousands of Iraqis captured by Allied coalition forces. The 402nd is building and running a prison enclosure with a perimeter of almost 3 miles. Former Philadelphia police official Colonel Wendell Rich commands the 402nd and attached units totaling more than 1,000 men and women.
This is not the environment I read about in National Geographic, nor is it the environment I heard about in Lawrence of Arabia. As one of the fellows said, it's been cool here at night, and it's a nasty environment. We'll be glad to be home.
But you're doing real-world work that you trained for.
Yes, we are.
The men and women work 12-hour shifts 7 days a week, meeting the challenge of dealing with the tired, bewildered, and often malnourished Iraqis.
It's been a good learning experience. I think that we were pretty much prepared and trained for the mission. We've encountered a lot of challenges that I think we've collectively worked together to overcome. We now have prisoners, and I think everybody's enthusiastic, including myself, about doing the job, getting it done, turning these people back over to the Saudis, and coming on home.
Prisoners are looking all right, though. They don't really look as bad as we thought.
But are you able to help them in many cases?
Oh yeah, we're able to help them with their wounds here, and if we can't, we just send them back to the rear. And they take care of them back there at a hospital.
The 402nd quickly set up a headquarters, living quarters, and mess facilities, all in tents. And unit members helped Catholic chaplain Father Mark Rossetti build a church. Voluntary work that he said shows the spirit and commitment of the 402nd's men and women.
We have very faithful Catholics in the 402nd. And we've established our own little parish of St. Michael the Archangel with our community center next door. And this benefits the entire 402nd camp.
All of the unit members I talked to expressed pride in the important work they're doing. Most of all, the 402nd soldiers told me how much the support of the people at home meant to them as they worked in the north-central Saudi Arabian desert.
That's about it.
So keep the cards, letters, and care packages coming.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we get them from people that we don't even know.
I'd like to say hi to my wife, April, my son who's here at the 300, my sister who's here with the 424th, my mother and father, and even my mother-in-law. Thank you. Sergeant, they say you're a very important guy here. Do you have any idea why the troops say that? I think they're bluffing.
And when military historians and journalists cut through the fog of war to compile the full story of Operation Desert Storm, they will find a strong Pennsylvania connection to the leadership of the campaign.
Okay, the war is not over, and you've got to...
Desert Storm Commander General Norman Schwarzkopf has received much of the attention and praise for the success of the sudden and ferocious Allied attack on Kuwait and Iraq. But Schwarzkopf has given much of the credit for conducting and supporting the attack to two lieutenant generals from Pennsylvania, John Yosak and William Gus Pagonis. Pagonis is a native of Charleroi and a 1964 graduate of Penn State University. He received his third star in a field promotion ceremony as a tribute to his leadership and organizational skills in marshaling and moving all of the supplies, equipment, and ammunition needed to support the more than 560,000 U.S. troops in the Gulf. In an exclusive interview, Pagonis had high words of praise for U.S. Reserve and National Guard units.
The entire support command is made up of 60% of National Guard Reserve units, which cover transportation, maintenance, all kind of support, medical, and the entire logistical operation of the theater would never have been successful without their total insertion into the play.
And Pagonis told me military truckers were the unsung heroes of the round-the-clock and long-distance supply effort.
Truckers are a real special group. I'm a transporter by trade in the military. I've had a lot of transportation assignments, but they move more tonnage and more personnel and more EPWs, enemy prisoners of war, than anybody would ever imagine to be possible. On any given day, we had 4,500 trucks moving logistical supplies from all over the place. And the SYNC, General Schwarzkopf, when he made his briefing to the nation, he explained how the logisticians and transporters moved the entire force across a desert, and the enemy didn't even know it. So it was a tremendous effort, and the National Guard and Reserve units can be very proud of their efforts.
And what will the record show?
There was not one problem or challenge that was not defeated and corrected immediately. And that's because the quality of the force was so good. These soldiers, their forefathers from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, can be very proud of them. Both male and female have done a superb job. They're well trained, they're well educated, they're motivated, they're great Americans. And they're now going to return from probably one of the greatest conflicts that's ever been ever done in history. Two corps simultaneously moving in the attack. The enemy was totally surprised because the logisticians were able to build their logistical bases at the last moment. The transporter moved everybody across the battlefield. It just was a remarkable exercise that'll go down in the history books.
I'm Andy Michalczyk in Plains, the hometown of Lieutenant General John Yosak. A 1959 graduate of Penn State, Yosak commanded the U.S. Army Central Command Ground Forces, the driving push of the Allied knockout punch aimed at Iraq. His brothers David and Michael knew he could handle anything the Iraqis could throw at him.
They went through this exercise about a year before it really happened. If there would be an attack on
a nation in that area, and they played through this, and they had a dry run on it.
Only days before the attack, the three-star general underwent surgery. He returned to the battlefront with sutures in his stomach.
Again, saying that he is very humble. He wouldn't want to be considered a hero. He just would like to do his job and do his job well.
Yosak graduated with honors from Valley Forge Military Academy, and even today a hall is named in his honor at the Plains American Legion. But the general views the military as a force for peace, not war.
Because he has a big concern for the soldier, and he didn't want any of his soldiers to get hurt or to have any casualties.
And casualties were miraculously low. Michael and David like to think that their brother, the general, had a lot to do with that.
Well, there are many who believe the success of the Allied plan had its inception in lessons learned from the experience of the Vietnam War. And shortly before I left for the Gulf, Dr. Umid Najib drew that parallel during an interview. Dr. Najib is now a U.S. citizen. He was born and raised in Iraq. He is the Dean of Engineering at Wilkes University.
What's happening to me now in the Gulf area is exactly the opposite of what happened in Vietnam. In Vietnam, the war machinery and the decisions on the battlefield was strongly controlled by the president. Now we are in a situation, I think, which is exactly the opposite, where the president said, this is my objective, just take him out. And the military is looking at it as a strategic approach and a tactical approach, and forgetting about all political and other components, which what military people are supposed to do. And that can create a problem for the president and puts him in a corner that he cannot really come out of it sometimes.
Sometimes we're too good at what we're doing.
Absolutely, because the military gets his orders, going to do his job. If he doesn't do his job, then he's not really a proper military person.
So actually the conduct of this war almost being in a backlash to the criticism of how the Vietnam War was conducted.
I think so, and I think the president keep repeating this in his speeches. That's the hint I get, and it is not really... maybe it works well here in the United States, but it doesn't look works well outside.
And now more of the faces of our men and women serving in the Persian Gulf.
I'm Sergeant First Class Fred Shaw from Orangeville, Pennsylvania.
Specialist Rosengrant. I work in the motor pool as a clerk, and I'm from Mahopac, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Major Thomas Molesta.
My name is Sergeant First Class Scanlon.
Amy Williams from Canton, Pennsylvania.
Specialist David Swartz, I'm from Oneida.
Roberta Yeager.
Captain Robert Humphrey.
Bob Paszynski, 44th PA, Vietnamico.
During the war, the world came to know Iraq's Scud missiles as weapons of terror and mass destruction. When Desert Storm Diary returns, I will share with you the experience of a Scud attack. Hello. The Persian Gulf War ended with the unconditional surrender of Iraq and the liberation of Kuwait. But amid the joy of triumph remains the reality that despite the lopsided Allied victory, that victory was not without cost. The largest single casualty-producing incident of the war came at the beginning of the end, as Allied ground forces roared toward victory and as journalists scrambled to keep up with the troops and the story. Scud alerts had become part of the working conditions at the Dhahran International Hotel, where the Joint Information Bureau and much of the Media Corps were located. During the week I worked in and out of the hotel, there were 6 alerts. Sirens wailed, setting off a rush for the basement bomb shelters. At the same time, camera crews rushed to the media platform behind the hotel to try to catch a shot of Patriot missiles launched to intercept any incoming Scuds. On the night of the Scud hit, I heard an explosion, but saw no Patriots launched. Other videographers and I pointed our cameras, thinking at first we were seeing Patriots fired. only to realize we were seeing the flaming afterburners of British Tornado fighter bombers taking off from a nearby airfield. But a Scud had been fired. An amateur using a home video camera got this shot. Then minutes later came word there had been a Scud hit, but no specific information on where. A Saudi Information Ministry official organized a hasty convoy of news crews for a high-speed twisting ride to the impact site. We found a nightmare. 2 cars had run off the road because of the impact several hundred yards away. Traffic was gridlocked. U.S. and Saudi military police were trying to seal off the area. The large building just 100 yards away was shredded like tissue paper. I counted 40 ambulances racing into the scene. At least 4 medevac helicopters with spotlights added to the sea of light and sound. Then I found a witness.
What was that building being used for?
As far as I know, it was an American Army transport headquarters.
And what was going on at the time that the missile hit?
I understand they were all at evening meal in the mess hall.
Have you talked to any of the soldiers who were coming out of there?
Well, I talked to a soldier who was helping pull some of the persons out of there, yes.
And he said there were casualties?
Oh, yes, definitely. Many.
Where did it hit?
Right on top.
Of what?
The ambulances roared away. The helicopters flew in and out. Reporters scrambled for information.
So this night, amid all the euphoria about the carefully crafted tactician's timetable, there erupted a hellfire in the form of a Scud direct hit on a U.S. military facility.
The full and awful story would emerge in the next few hours. By the next day, we knew 28 Americans were dead and 100 injured, a number of them reservists from western Pennsylvania. It was a night of terror, a vision underscored by the daylight view of the shattered building. A story seen from too close.
So what kind of region is this where Americans fought and died, and where many Americans continue to serve?
3 types of scenes help to describe Saudi Arabia: the desert, the mosque, and the construction project. Now, Saudi Arabia is enormously wealthy because of its oil resources. And virtually everywhere you look in the main cities of Jeddah, Riyadh, and Dammam, Dhahran, you see construction work paid for by oil money. But in most cases, Saudis are not doing the work. The nation employs several million foreign workers. They work in the oil fields and terminals, in the hotels and restaurants and airports. And the Filipinos, Pakistanis, Egyptians, and others are happy to be paid high Saudi wages. Their home countries depend on the money they send to their families. The foreign workers and oil money are building a massive and modern infrastructure of roads and recreation and housing facilities. The oil money has allowed Saudi Arabia to have armed forces with equipment and headquarters that belie the country's population of 14 million. And first and foremost, Saudi Arabia is a Muslim nation, with Islam as the official state religion and law. Under that law, a man may have 4 wives. Women remain veiled in public. And in almost 2 weeks in country, I did not see a single Saudi Arabian woman working or driving a car. And while I found the Saudi Information Ministry and the Kuwaiti Government Information Office helpful, there is no doubt that you could argue the governments of both countries are as repressive as the Iraqi government we fought and defeated in coalition with Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and 24 other nations. Now, whether the future will be different from the past is an open question, as concerns a region with a long history and a reputation for being timeless and hard to know and understand. I left Saudi Arabia feeling while it may not be a culture we need to like, it is a culture we need to understand. Dr. Mahmoud Fahmy is a Middle East analyst. He is now a U.S. citizen, born and raised in Egypt. He heads the continuing education program at Wilkes University. We talked about the future of the region.
There are issues which has to be settled very quickly because these are very explosive. And I mentioned to you that one of it is that the Arab states has to recognize the State of Israel. The State of Israel is there to stay. Number two, I think Israel also has to compromise in terms of their relationship with the Palestinians by giving the Palestinians an opportunity to express their own political aspiration and national aspiration in developing a kind of a homeland. This is an area which we have to do it fast. Now, the others can go in terms of steps. We have really sacrificed a lot, and we have a lot of things, we have put into it. Thank God it went very well, and we were victorious in what we are doing, but at the same time, I would like to see the United States working as a catalyst, rather than imposing any kind of a solution on the area there. The countries of this area have to work together. And as I mentioned earlier, that the issue is not going to be oil, and the issue is not going to be border, but the issue is going to be more vital than this, which is water. You can live without oil, okay? You can use other source. It will be difficult, but you cannot live more than 3 days without drinking water. In another way, that this area is going to be very vital.
And now more of the faces of our local men and women serving in the Persian Gulf.
My name is Specialist Joseph C. Smith from Pennsylvania.
My name is Major Charlie Luce, and I'm from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Again, Joseph Bigaski, Jr.
I am Sergeant Tom Russo, Dunmore, PA.
Specialist Joey Flynn, I'm from Wilkes-Barre, PA.
Sergeant First Class Daniel A. Mancini, Yatesville, Pennsylvania.
Staff Sergeant Charles Rogers, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Specialist Lori Sharenwell. I'm from Moscow, PA.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Jeff Hurd from Bangor, Pennsylvania.
Specialist Davis Bedell from Woodhaven, Pennsylvania.
My name is Sergeant Martin McKinney, and I'm from Old Forge, Pennsylvania.
I'm Corporal Michael John Colvin. I'm from Park Summit, Pennsylvania.
Hi, I'm Specialist Powell from Lima, Pennsylvania.
Specialist Cindy Pachalski from Hot Bottom, Pennsylvania.
Specialist Thomas Streller from Colliers, Pennsylvania.
I'm Master Sergeant Tony Giordani from Lewisburg, Pennsylvania.
Lieutenant Colonel Tim Foley. I'm the Camp Executive Officer from Scranton, Pennsylvania.
My name is First Sergeant Tom Allen. I'm from Dallas, Pennsylvania.
My name is First Lieutenant Kevin C. Havens from Honey Pot, Pennsylvania.
My name is Colonel Wendell Rich. I'm from Huntington Valley, Pennsylvania.
I'll be back with some final impressions and thoughts, including a look at the first time live TV went to war. When the final reports are written on how this war was covered, there will be much said about how satellite technology and pool coverage changed the war and how it was covered. The media coverage of the war had two focal points. One in Riyadh, from where the daily briefings by Allied coalition spokesmen were covered and broadcast around the world. The other was in Dhahran, headquarters for most of the military effort to organize and escort pool coverage of field units. Both locations were mazes of broadcast equipment. Both locations were staffed by the host nation's Saudi Information Ministry, the coordinator of all credentialing. Both locations were major hotels which served as work and living space for the international print and electronic media organizations.
Yeah, I'll better have some big guns, I'll tell you that.
And both locations were headquarters for military censors who reviewed the video and written stories about the conduct of the war. And in Dhahran, where I worked, all of the major networks were represented. NBC, CBS, ABC, and CNN. In the midst of all this high-powered equipment, talent, and competition, I found it crucial to stay focused on my mission. And that was to report what was happening from where it was happening in context. And, if possible, to find local troops serving in the Gulf. The first mission was accomplished with satellite assistance from CNN. The second mission was accomplished by locating the 300th U.S. Army Reserve Field Hospital and the 402nd Military Police Company, and getting video of some of the unit members where they were living and working in the desert.
Specialist Thomas Streller from Clares, Pennsylvania. I'm Corporal Michael John Colvin. I'm from Park Summit, Pennsylvania.
I'm Joseph Bigaski, Jr., Third Enclosure Commander, 402nd MPs. Hometown is Mountaintop, Pennsylvania.
I'm Warrant Officer Candidate William Good, and I'm biomedical equipment repairman, 300 Field Hospital.
Got my necessities here. Heated M&Ms and toilet paper. Amy Williams from Canton, Pennsylvania.
As a journalist, it is vital always to remember your audience. For the people of northeastern and central Pennsylvania, the glimpses of those local troops were big stories. And because of satellite technology, media coverage of this war featured for the first time the ability to report and show events as they happened. The debate is already raging whether reporting was as good as the technology, and whether the unprecedented access and flow of information actually increased public understanding. There are also real questions whether the pool system of assigning reporters to cover combat units was fair or workable. The military insists the system is needed to protect operational information and to protect journalists from the dangers of a fast-moving battlefield. Some journalists would argue the policy violates the Constitution by restricting access and managing information. But as I have found covering any major changing story, in each day and every day, there were flashes of brilliance, mistakes in judgment, egos, tension, and humor, scooping, and getting scooped. In the final analysis, it is not for those who told the story to decide if the story was well told. And what did I learn? Well, I learned there is yet much to see and learn in this world, much that is not as it was, and much that is not as it seems. And as I looked at the faces of the earnest, committed, and well-trained men and women serving in the Gulf, I learned that there is much right about them and about this nation and this world. But I must sound the warning that in celebrating the triumph of the present and the return of those who now serve, we must not forget the service and sacrifice of those who fought in less popular wars with less definitive conclusions. I was struck by the vast geographical distances in the Saudi desert and the vast cultural distances between the Judeo-Christian world and the Islamic world, a world where people drive 100 miles an hour and leave crumpled wreckage at roadside as mute testimony to terrible and unrecorded accidents. I found a country under construction and under scrutiny and siege by an army of 2,000 international journalists, raising questions of whether the Saudi doors that opened so willingly to outside presence and influence in a time of need will close with the same firmness characteristic of the Saudi government when the need is met. I will always carry the images of the U.S. Patriot missile fragment that stands in the lobby of the Dhahran International Hotel, a fragment signed by journalists in thanks for the successful interception of an Iraqi Scud missile. And I will always see the nightmarish scene just 3 miles away where 28 Americans died when a Scud that wasn't intercepted crashed through the roof of a U.S. military barracks. And I carry the lasting impressions of local citizen soldiers finding ways to do a demanding job in the desert without losing their personalities.
I guess you could say eat your hearts out with those, right?
Best message we can send home to all the families of the soldiers here is that we're all fine, healthy, and in good spirits.
I just want to say that all the friends and loved ones at home should be very proud of everybody from northeastern Pennsylvania. They've done an outstanding job here so far.
And without losing their commitment to home.
Kevin understands you're a newlywed.
Yes, I am. January 12th.
You have a message for your family and friends back home.
I'd like to say I love them, I miss them, hope to be home soon.
How long have you been here, Kevin?
Too long.
What's for lunch today?
Well, we have our main entrees, MRE, for lunch. We had turkey tonight. That's real good.
And just a few yards away from the gleaming Gulfside superhighway in Dhahran, there was the lone Persian Gulf seabird, oil-soaked and condemned by events not of his making. And I will not forget the euphoric Kuwaitis who gathered in my hotel to await the liberation of their homeland and the restoration of a government reputedly as repressive as the one the Allied coalition battled and defeated in Iraq. I left knowing the U.S. presence made a difference, but not knowing the full extent of that difference. So what is the final impact of Operation Desert Storm? Certainly not much on this land, certainly none on the great ships of the desert as they wander unperturbed as they have for thousands of years across the timeless and trackless desert. But until we know the nature of the alliances and allegiances and the friendships and enmities that emerge from the conflict, we will not know the full story of Operation Desert Storm. In Saudi Arabia, I'm Keith Martin, Eyewitness News.